Hi class, and welcome to our lesson 3.2, Order of Operations Extension Notes. So in previous grades, you've talked about the order of operations, but now we're going to take that knowledge and apply it to solving some real world and some more complex problems. But first, there are two concepts that we must remember. The first is this notion called PEMDAS. We should know that P stands for parentheses, E stands for exponents, M and D both stand for multiply and divide, and A and S stand for addition and subtraction. In order to write these at a diagonal, I just turn my paper like this and fill them in as such. Now, this is the order that you should go in when we are solving order of operations problems, or problems that have more than one operation. We should start by solving anything that's in parentheses, then simplifying our exponents. With multiplying and dividing, we're going to circle the M and the D because we need to know that whichever comes first when we're going from left to right is what we solve. Okay? So in a problem, if we have a division symbol before the multiplication symbol, we're going to look going left to right. Whichever one of these comes first, multiplying or dividing, that's the one we're going to solve first. The same rule applies with addition and subtraction. Going from left to right, whichever symbol that we see first in the problem, that's what we're going to solve. Now let's take a look at an example problem. I want you to write this one down. Let's take a look at this problem. We have 6 times parentheses 8 minus 4, close parentheses, plus 2 to the second power. The first thing I'm going to do is look at PEMDAS. The first thing that comes first is to solve what's in parentheses. Everything else I'm just going to bring down. So I will start by writing my equal sign, bringing down 6 times. When I solve what's in parentheses, 8 minus 4 is 4. So I'm going to bring down my 4. Plus 2 to the second power. I'm going to bring down my equal sign. The next thing is to handle any exponents, which we have one right here. So I'm going to bring down 6 times 4 plus 2 to the second power is 4. Bring down my equal sign. The next thing I'm going to do is see whether or not I have any multiplication or division, and I do. 6 times 4 is 24 plus 4. And finally, 24 plus 4 is 28, which is my final answer. Okay? Now, I want you to try these 3 example problems, but I'm going to start you off with the first one and give you a hint. Remember, since we have a situation where we're dividing a numerator by a denominator, you want to first solve and handle everything in the numerator, and then solve and handle everything in the denominator step by step, and then divide at the end to get your answer. Alright? Solve example 1, example 2, and example 3. And then make sure that you get it checked by me before flipping to the back and moving to the second concept that we need to remember. You may pause the video now to work your problems, get it checked, before moving on to the next. The next thing that we're going to talk about is how to solve word problems using some strategies. The first strategy that you need to know about is that you need to make sure that you read, not only read, but understand what the problem is asking you. Gain an understanding. And here's how you can do that. The second strategy is draw a picture. If the problem is illustrating a situation that calls for you to kind of imagine what the situation is, then put that idea on paper in the form of a picture. And it may make the problem a little easier to understand and solve. Finally, our last step is to pay attention to key words and use the buck strategy. Remember that the buck strategy states that you can box the question, underline important information, circle important vocabulary, knock out unimportant information, and solve by drawing a picture or a diagram, which we already discussed. So with that in mind, let's move to our first example question. Our first example question says, at a light bulb factory, the production average for the first shift is 956 bulbs. I'm going to underline that because that's important. 1,695 bulbs for the second shift, and 735 bulbs for the third shift. What is a reasonable number of boxes for the company to have on hand for 1 day's production if each box holds 24 light bulbs? So let's take a look at some of these words here. It says a light bulb factory, the production average. Well, first of all, we need to know what production means. Production means how many bulbs are being made. Okay? So in the first shift, we have this amount. In the second shift, we have this amount. And in the third shift, we have this amount. They ask, what is the reasonable number of boxes for the company to have on hand for 1 day's production? Okay? Now, if you know anything about shifts, then you know that within 1 day, we can have a first shift, a second shift, and a third shift. All three of those happen in 1 day. And they're asking for us to figure out how many light bulbs are made if each box holds 24 light bulbs. Okay? So that means that we're going to have to add all these bulbs made in every shift up and then divide by the number that the box can hold. So now I'm going to go ahead and set my problem up like this. I have my first shift amount, second shift amount, and third shift amount divided by 24, which is the number that each box holds. The first thing I'm going to do is add up everything at the top, and that's going to give me 3,386 divided by 24. And when I divide that, it's going to give me 141.08, and it's a continuing decimal. Now the question says, what is a reasonable number? And when I look at my answer choices, the answer that's closest to this is B. 140 is the reasonable number of boxes. And that's my answer. Now what I want you to do is try and solve example 2 and example 3. And before moving on to your iExcel activities, get these checked by me so I can make sure you're on the right track, and then you are free to move on with the rest of your task sheet. See ya!